The Silent Invasion. The first child fell asleep on a Tuesday afternoon in a small town in Nebraska. 8-year-old Tommy Hawkins was playing in his backyard, chasing fireflies in the warm summer twilight, when he suddenly collapsed onto the soft grass. His mother, Sarah, watching from the kitchen window, thought he had simply tripped. But when Tommy didn't get up, she rushed outside, her heart pounding. "Tommy, honey, are you okay?" Sarah called, kneeling beside her son. She gently shook him, expecting him to wake with a start or grumble about being disturbed. But Tommy remained still, his chest rising and falling in a deep, peaceful rhythm. His eyes moved rapidly beneath closed lids, as if he were dreaming intensely. Sarah scooped Tommy into her arms and rushed him to the emergency room. The doctors were baffled. All of Tommy's vital signs were normal, but they couldn't wake him. It was as if he had simply decided to take a very deep nap. As the sun set that evening, reports began flooding in from across the globe. Children everywhere, from the bustling streets of Tokyo to the remote villages of the Amazon, were falling into the same inexplicable slumber. Parents watched helplessly as their little ones drifted off mid-sentence, mid-laugh, mid-tantrum. Toddlers slumped over their building blocks. Teenagers slid from their chairs onto classroom floors. Within 24 hours, every child under the age of 18 was asleep. The world descended into chaos. Hospitals were overwhelmed, their pediatric wards filled to bursting with peacefully sleeping children. Schools stood empty, playgrounds fell silent. Parents took to the streets, demanding answers from governments that had none to give. Scientists worked around the clock, analyzing blood samples, brain scans, and environmental data. They found nothing. No virus, no toxin, no environmental factor could explain the global phenomenon. It was as if some cosmic force had simply decided it was bedtime for the world's youth. As the third day of the crisis dawned, the sky changed. It started as a shimmer, like heat rising from sun-baked asphalt. Then, slowly, shapes began to form. Vast, ethereal ships materialized in the atmosphere, their structures defying human architecture. They looked like living constellations, pulsing with soft, star-like lights that shifted and swirled in hypnotic patterns. The alien ships were invisible to radar and other detection systems. Missiles fired at them passed straight through, as if the ships were made of nothing but light and mist. Yet their presence was undeniable, looming over every major city on the planet. Panic gripped the world. Military forces mobilized, governments declared states of emergency, and people huddled in their homes, clutching their sleeping children close. The normally bustling streets of New York, London, and Beijing were eerily empty, save for the occasional military vehicle rumbling past. It was then that the abductions began. In Houston, Texas, Maria Alvarez was holding her sleeping 6-year-old daughter, Sophia, when a beam of soft, silvery light poured through the ceiling. Maria screamed as Sophia's body began to lift from her arms, rising towards the light. She clung to her daughter with all her might, but it was like trying to hold onto a soap bubble. Sophia slipped through her fingers and vanished into the light. Similar scenes played out across the globe. Children rose from their beds, floated out of cars, and drifted upward from hospital gurneys. The beams of light passed through all obstacles, roofs, walls, even mountain rock, to reach the sleeping children. In the Highlands of Scotland, Angus MacLeod watched in horror as his 3 children were lifted from the family's storm cellar, rising through layers of earth and concrete. In Mumbai, Priya Sharma sobbed as her twins disappeared from her arms in the middle of a crowded subway station. And in a remote Inuit village in northern Canada, Eska Akulak howled in anguish as her son vanished from inside their igloo. Humanity watched, helpless, as its future was stolen away. But not everyone was affected by the alien influence. A small percentage of adults, less than 1 in 10,000, found themselves immune to the strange sleep that had claimed the children. These individuals reported feeling a slight pressure in their heads when near the alien beams, but otherwise remained unaffected. Dr. Elena Rossi, a neurologist in Milan, was one of these immune individuals. As the crisis unfolded, she worked tirelessly to understand why she and a handful of others were spared. Initial genetic testing revealed a rare mutation in the pineal gland, but its significance remained a mystery. As the abductions continued, Dr. Rossi made a startling discovery. By comparing her brainwaves to those of the sleeping children, she found a striking similarity. It was as if her brain was naturally producing the same frequency that the aliens were using to induce sleep in the children. "It's like we're tuned to their channel," she explained to a group of bewildered colleagues. "We can hear their broadcast, but it doesn't affect us the same way." This discovery provided the first real lead in understanding the alien presence, but it came too late for most. By the end of the first week, nearly 90% of the world's children had been taken. The immune adults became humanity's sole witnesses to the full scope of the event. They described the alien ships in detail, massive translucent structures that seemed to be alive, pulsing with internal light and constantly shifting form. Some likened them to giant jellyfish floating in the sky, others to living cities made of starlight. These observers also reported seeing the children after they were taken by the light beams. The sleeping forms of millions of young humans could be seen suspended within the ethereal ships, arranged in vast, spiraling patterns. It was a haunting, beautiful sight that filled those who saw it with a mixture of awe and deep primal fear. Governments around the world tried to respond, but conventional weapons were useless against the intangible alien ships. Nuclear options were considered and quickly abandoned. No one wanted to risk harming the abducted children. As the number of remaining children dwindled, a sort of grim acceptance settled over the world. Parents who still had their children huddled in basements and homemade bunkers, knowing it was futile but unable to stop trying. Those whose children had been taken wandered the streets in a daze, their eyes constantly drawn to the shimmering shapes in the sky. It was a Brazilian theologian, Father Gabriel Silva, who first proposed the term, "the rapture of the innocent," to describe the event. The phrase quickly caught on, spreading through social media and news outlets. It captured both the religious overtones that many ascribed to the situation and the sense of devastating loss felt by all. As the abductions slowed to a trickle, with only the most remote and hidden children remaining, the alien ships began to move. They rose higher in the atmosphere, their forms stretching and elongating as if preparing for some great effort. Then, with a flash of light that momentarily turned night to day across the entire planet, they were gone. In their wake, they left a changed world. 500 million children had vanished, taken to an unknown fate among the stars. Those left behind were shell-shocked, struggling to comprehend the scale of what had happened. But as the initial shock began to fade, something else took its place. Determination. Humanity had been struck a grievous blow, but it wasn't defeated. In labs, command centers, and homes around the world, people began to rally. Dr. Elena Rossi and her fellow immune individuals became the focus of intense study. If their unique neurological makeup held the key to understanding the aliens, then perhaps it also held the key to fighting back, to reclaiming the stolen children. Governments and private organizations poured resources into space programs, driven by the desperate hope of following the alien ships. The immune adults were recruited to form specialized task forces, their ability to perceive the aliens making them invaluable assets. And in homes around the world, parents clung to hope. They left beds made and toys in place, waiting for the day their children would return. They shared stories and photos, keeping the memories of their lost ones alive. The silent invasion had ended, but humanity's response was just beginning. The stars that had once seemed so distant now held the promise of reunion, of making their families whole again. It would be a long journey, fraught with challenges and dangers, but for the chance to bring their children home, there was no distance too great, no obstacle too daunting. The search for the stolen generation had begun. The awakening. Zara Chen's eyes fluttered open, her mind groggy and disoriented. The last thing she remembered was sitting at her desk, working on her history homework. Now she found herself in a vast, otherworldly space that defied comprehension. The room, if it could be called that, pulsed with soft, bioluminescent light. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. Translucent tendrils crisscrossed the ceiling, carrying glowing particles that danced like fireflies. The floor beneath her felt warm and slightly springy, as if she were standing on living tissue. As Zora's eyes adjusted to her surroundings, she realized she wasn't alone. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of other children were waking up around her. Some cried out in confusion, others stood in stunned silence, taking in the alien environment. "Hello," Zora called out, her voice trembling. "Can anyone tell me where we are?" No one answered aloud, but suddenly, Zora's mind was flooded with a cacophony of thoughts and emotions. Fear, confusion, and awe washed over her in waves. She clutched her head, overwhelmed by the mental onslaught. "I want my mom. What is this place? Are we dead?" The voices weren't spoken, they resonated directly in her mind. Somehow, Zora could hear the thoughts of everyone around her. And judging by the startled looks on their faces, they could hear hers too. "Everyone, please," Zora thought as loudly as she could. "Try to stay calm. We need to figure out what's going on." To her surprise, the mental chatter quieted. Hundreds of pairs of eyes turned to look at her, a mix of hope and fear in their gazes. A boy who looked about 10 years old stepped forward. "You're right," he thought, his mental voice carrying a slight French accent. "I'm Matthew. I was in Paris before whatever this has happened." "I'm Zora," she replied, both aloud and in her mind. "I'm from San Francisco. Does anyone know where we are or how we got here?" A chorus of mental negatives answered her. Children from all over the world were present, their thoughts carrying hints of their native languages and cultures. But none of them had any memory of how they'd arrived in this strange place. As the initial shock began to wear off, the children started to explore their surroundings. Zara noticed that the room seemed to respond to their presence. When a group of younger kids huddled together, looking scared, the floor beneath them softened and rose slightly, forming a comforting nest. When an older girl reached out to touch one of the pulsing walls, it rippled under her fingers, changing color in response to her touch. "It's like the whole place is alive," Matthew observed, voicing everyone's thoughts. Zara was about to respond when a new presence made itself known. It wasn't a voice or a thought, but a feeling, ancient, vast, and undeniably alien. The children fell silent, their minds instinctively recoiling from the otherworldly consciousness that now permeated the space. Then the far wall of the chamber began to change. It shimmered and parted like a curtain, revealing a group of beings unlike anything the children had ever seen or imagined. The aliens, for they could be nothing else, resembled living constellations. Their bodies were composed of swirling lights and ethereal mist, constantly shifting and rearranging themselves. They had no discernible faces, yet the children could feel the weight of their gaze. One of the beings floated forward, its form coalescing into a vaguely humanoid shape. When it spoke, it did so directly into the minds of the children, its thoughts carrying a sense of vast knowledge and unfathomable age. "Greetings, young ones," the alien communicated. "We are the Journalians, keepers of the Universal Library. We have brought you here for a grand purpose." Fear and awe rippled through the assembled children. Zara, struggling to maintain her composure, stepped forward. "Why us?" she asked, her mental voice surprisingly steady. "Why have you taken us from our homes, our families?" The Journalian's form shimmered, a cascade of lights that might have been an expression of emotion. "Your species stands at a crossroads," it explained. "Great potential lies within you, but so does great danger. We have brought you here to nurture that potential and to preserve the essence of humanity." Images flooded the children's minds, glimpses of a possible future. They saw Earth ravaged by war, disease, and environmental catastrophe. But they also saw incredible achievements, cities among the stars, the unlocking of the mind's true potential, harmony between humanity and nature. We are the Galactic Librarians, the Journalian continued. For eons, we have preserved the knowledge and potential of species across the universe. Some flourish and join the galactic community. Others falter and fade. We ensure that nothing is truly lost. The implications of these words sank in slowly. They hadn't just been kidnapped. They'd been archived. As this realization spread, something unexpected began to happen. The fear and confusion that had gripped the children started to give way to a new emotion, curiosity. The human drive to explore, to understand, began to assert itself. A girl from Kenya named Amani was the first to voice what many were thinking. Can you teach us? Can you show us how to unlock this potential you speak of? The Journalian's form brightened, a clear sign of approval. That is precisely why you are here, young ones. You will learn, grow, and discover the true extent of your capabilities. Over the next few hours, though time felt fluid and strange in this place, the children began to explore their new abilities. They found that not only could they communicate telepathically, but they could also manipulate their environment with their thoughts. Zara discovered she could create small objects by focusing her mind. A pencil, a book, a small toy, all materialized in her hands when she concentrated hard enough. Others found they could change the color and texture of the living walls, or create intricate patterns of light in the air. Matthew showed a talent for healing. When a younger child scraped her knee while exploring, he was able to ease her pain and accelerate the healing process with just a touch and a focused thought. Amani, to everyone's amazement, demonstrated an ability to perceive complex systems. She could close her eyes and somehow see the flow of energy through the living station. It's like a giant organism, she explained excitedly, and we're inside its body. As the children experimented with their new abilities, Zara found herself naturally taking on a leadership role. She organized the others into groups, encouraging them to practice and share their discoveries. Her calm demeanor and quick thinking helped keep panic at bay, giving the others a sense of purpose in this strange new world. The Journalians watched all of this with what felt like approval. They provided guidance when asked but seemed content to let the children explore and learn on their own for the most part. As what felt like days passed, though it was hard to be sure, the initial shock of their situation began to fade. The children started to adapt to their new reality with the remarkable resilience of youth. They missed their homes and families terribly, but the wonders around them and the excitement of discovering their new abilities provided a powerful distraction. Yet, not everything was harmonious. A group of older children, led by a boy named Kai, began to question the Journalians' motives. How do we know they're telling us the truth? Kai argued. For all we know, this learning is just a way to control us. His words found purchase in the minds of some, seeding doubt and rekindling fear. Zara found herself trying to mediate between those who embraced their new situation and those who viewed it with suspicion. It was during one of these debates that something extraordinary happened. Zara, frustrated by the arguing, unconsciously reached out with her mind, and suddenly found herself able to perceive the thoughts of the Journalians themselves. For a brief, overwhelming moment, she glimpsed the vastness of their knowledge, the weight of eons they had witnessed. She saw countless civilizations rise and fall, the birth and death of stars, the intricate web of life that connected all things in the universe. When the connection broke, Zara stumbled, her mind reeling from the experience. The other children gathered around her, concern evident in their thoughts. "Are you okay?" Matthew asked, steadying her with a hand on her shoulder. Zara nodded slowly, her eyes wide with wonder. "I saw," she began, struggling to put the experience into words. "I saw everything. The Journalians, their history, their purpose. It's all true, everything they told us. And there's so much more." Her words sent a ripple of excitement and apprehension through the group. If what Zara said was true, if she had actually touched the mind of these ancient beings, Then the implications were staggering. As the children digested this new development, the wall shimmered once again, and a journalian appeared. Its form seemed somehow clearer now, more defined. "You have taken your first steps into a larger universe," it communicated. "But this is only the beginning. Are you ready to truly begin your journey?" Zara looked around at the faces of her fellow children. Some eager, some afraid, all forever changed by what they had experienced. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. "We're ready," she said, speaking for all of them. "Show us." And with that, the next phase of their extraordinary adventure began. Earth's desperate gambit. Dr. Elena Rossi stared at the holographic display, her eyes bloodshot from countless sleepless nights. The 3D model of a human brain rotated slowly, certain areas highlighted in pulsing red. "Run it again," she commanded, her voice hoarse. Her assistant, Dr. Amit Patel, nodded wearily and initiated the simulation. They watched as the virtual neurons fired, creating patterns that mimicked those observed in the abducted children just before they vanished. "It's close," Amit muttered, "but still not quite there." Elena slammed her fist on the desk in frustration. 6 months had passed since the mass abduction, and they were still struggling to understand the mechanism behind it. The world outside their lab was teetering on the brink of collapse. Without children, humanity faced an uncertain future. Hope was fading fast. But Elena and her team of fellow immunes, those mysteriously unaffected by the alien sleep, refused to give up. They knew they were humanity's best chance at understanding the journalians and potentially rescuing the lost children. A commotion outside the lab drew their attention. General Laura Chen, the military liaison to their project, burst through the door, her usually composed demeanor shaken. "Dr. Rossi," she said urgently, "we've got a situation. The Hail Mary project. It worked." Elena's eyes widened. The Hail Mary project was a desperate attempt to create a wormhole based on fragmentary data gleaned from the alien abduction event. Most had dismissed it as a pipe dream. "Are you certain?" Elena asked, hardly daring to believe it. General Chen nodded grimly. "The test probe made it through. We received telemetry for approximately 3 seconds before losing contact. But those 3 seconds..." She paused, taking a deep breath. "Doctor, we saw them. We saw the children." The lab erupted into a flurry of activity. As the news spread, scientists, military personnel, and government officials poured in. Displays lit up with data from the probe, fuzzy images showing glimpses of an alien structure teeming with small, human-like figures. Amid the chaos, Elena felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Gabriela Morales, a fellow immune and quantum physicist. "Elena," Gabriela said, her voice low and urgent, "we need to talk. Privately." They slipped away to a quiet corner of the lab. Gabriela's eyes darted around nervously before she spoke. "The wormhole. It's not stable," she whispered. "We can force it open, yes, but we can't guarantee it'll stay open, or that anything can return through it." Elena's heart sank. "A one-way trip," she murmured. Gabriela nodded solemnly. "Whoever goes through, they might never come back." The weight of this revelation settled heavily on Elena's shoulders. They had a way to reach the children, but at what cost? She looked around the lab, at the faces filled with renewed hope and determination. How could she tell them that their miracle came with such a terrible price? Before she could decide, General Chen's voice cut through the noise. "Attention, everyone. We're convening an emergency meeting in 1 hour to discuss our next steps. Dr. Rossi, we'll need you to lead the briefing." As the crowd dispersed to prepare, Elena pulled Gabriela aside. "We need options," she said firmly. "Work with your team. Find a way to stabilize that wormhole, or at least give us more time. We're not sending anyone on a suicide mission, if we can help it." Gabriela nodded and hurried off. Elena turned to find Amit approaching, his face grave. "I know that look," Elena said. "What is it?" Amit hesitated before responding. "It's the serum," he said, The one we've been developing to replicate our immunity. Early results show it might work, but the side effects are severe, possibly fatal. Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of impossible decisions bearing down on her. When she opened them again, her gaze was steel. "Keep working on it," she ordered. "Refine it. We need every tool we can get." An hour later, Elena stood before a room filled with the most powerful people left on Earth. Military leaders, heads of state, and scientific luminaries all turned their attention to her as she began her presentation. "Ladies and gentlemen," she started, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "We stand at a crossroads. The Hail Mary Project has given us a window, narrow and dangerous though it may be, to potentially rescue our children and confront the beings who took them." She laid out the situation: the unstable wormhole, the unfinished serum, the glimpses of the alien world beyond. As she spoke, she could see the mix of hope and fear in the eyes of her audience. "We have 3 major challenges," Elena continued. "First, stabilizing the wormhole to ensure safe passage and, more importantly, a way back. Second, protecting our team from whatever alien influence affected the children. And third, actually locating and retrieving the abductees in an entirely alien environment." The room erupted into discussion. Some argued for immediate action, while others urged caution. The debate raged for hours, with tempers flaring and old rivalries resurfacing. In the end, it was the U.S. president who silenced the room. "Enough," she said, her voice carrying the weight of months of anguish. "We've spent half a year watching our world crumble. We've got a shot. Maybe our only shot. At fixing this. I say we take it." Her words seemed to crystallize the mood of the room. One by one, the other leaders nodded their agreement. "Dr. Rossi," the president continued, turning to Elena, "you've led this research from the beginning. What do you need to make this happen?" Elena took a deep breath. This was the moment she both dreaded and hoped for. "A team," she said. "A small group of immunes, trained and prepared for what we might face. We'll need the best minds, the strongest bodies, and the bravest hearts." She paused, knowing her next words would be controversial. "And we need volunteers willing to test the serum. It's not ready, it's dangerous, but it might be our only way to protect a larger force once we're through." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Then, slowly, hands began to raise. Scientists offered their expertise, soldiers volunteered for the mission, parents begged to be included for a chance to find their children. Over the next weeks, a plan took shape. A team of 20 was assembled. A mix of scientists, soldiers, and specialists, all immunes. They began an intensive training program, preparing for every scenario they could imagine, and many they couldn't. Gabriella and her team worked tirelessly on the wormhole, making incremental progress in stabilizing the portal. They couldn't guarantee a 2-way trip, but they could now promise a window of several hours before the wormhole would collapse. Amit's serum entered human trials. The results were mixed. Some volunteers gained temporary immunity to the alien influence, while others suffered severe neurological side effects. Refinement continued, with each iteration bringing them closer to a viable solution. As the day of the mission approached, Elena found herself standing before the completed wormhole generator. The massive machine hummed with power, the air around it shimmering with potential energy. General Chen approached, now a close friend after months of working together. "Having second thoughts?" she asked softly. Elena shook her head. "No, just processing. This is really happening." "You don't have to go, you know," Laura said. "You're too valuable to risk." Elena turned to her friend, a sad smile on her face. "That's exactly why I have to go. I won't ask anyone to take a risk I'm not willing to take myself." Laura nodded, understanding all too well. "Just promise me you'll come back. All of you." "I promise we'll try," Elena replied, knowing it was the most she could honestly offer. As they stood there, alarms suddenly blared to life. Technicians rushed to their stations, calling out readings and status updates. "What's happening?" Elena shouted over the noise. A young physicist looked up from her console, her face pale. "The wormhole, Doctor. It's opening on its own." Delina and Laura exchanged a shocked look. After all their careful planning, it seemed the universe had other ideas. The mission was starting, ready or not. As the wormhole flickered to life before them, Elena steeled herself for what was to come. Humanity's desperate gambit was about to begin, and the fate of an entire generation hung in the balance. "Well," she said, a hint of gallows humor in her voice, "I guess that's our cue. Time to go save the world." And with that, Dr. Elena Rossi took her first step towards an alien world, leading humanity's last, best hope for redemption. Collision of worlds. The wormhole pulsed with otherworldly energy as Dr. Elena Rossi and her team of 19 stepped through. For a moment, reality itself seemed to bend and twist around them. Then, with a sensation like breaking through the surface of water, they emerged into an alien world. Elena gasped, her senses overwhelmed. They stood in a vast chamber that defied earthly architecture. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent light, and the floor beneath their feet felt almost alive, responding to their presence with subtle movements. "Status check," Elena called out, her voice steady despite the awe she felt. One by one, her team responded. All present, all intact. The wormhole shimmered behind them, a lifeline to Earth that could close at any moment. "Remember," Elena said, addressing the group, "our primary mission is to locate and retrieve as many children as possible. Secondary objective is to gather intel on the Journalians and their technology. Stay alert, stay together, and stay human." As if in response to her words, a wave of alien consciousness washed over them. Elena felt a pressure in her mind, a presence vast and ancient trying to make contact. "Shields up," she commanded, using the code phrase they'd developed. The team quickly formed a circle, backs to each other. Those who had successfully used the experimental serum focused their minds, creating a psychic barrier that pushed back against the alien influence. Slowly, the pressure receded. Elena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Good work, everyone. But stay alert. We don't know how long our defenses will hold." They began to move through the alien structure, their steps cautious but purposeful. The environment seemed to react to their presence, corridors shifting and reforming as they passed. Dr. Amit Patel, monitoring their vital signs and brain activity, spoke up. "Elena, I'm picking up human neural signatures. Lots of them. But they're different. Enhanced somehow." Before Elena could respond, a figure appeared at the end of the corridor. A young girl, no more than 12, with an otherworldly grace to her movements. Her eyes, when she turned to look at them, seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. "You shouldn't be here," the girl said, her voice echoing both aloud and in their minds. Elena stepped forward, her heart racing. "We've come for the children, to take them home." The girl, Zara, though Elena didn't know her name, tilted her head curiously. "Home. But we are home. The Journalians have shown us wonders beyond imagination. Why would we leave?" The team exchanged uneasy glances. This was not the reception they had expected. Suddenly, alarms blared. If such a human term could be applied to the psychic alert that assaulted their minds. The corridor behind Zora filled with children of various ages, their faces a mix of curiosity and wariness. "Intruders," one of the older boys announced, his mental voice rippling with authority. "The Journalians are aware of your presence. You must leave for your own safety." Elena stood her ground, not without the children. "Your parents, your families, they're waiting for you. The whole world is waiting." Her words seemed to cause a stir among the younger children. Whispers of "Mom" and "Dad" rippled through the group. But the older ones, led by Zara and the boy who had spoken, remained unmoved. "You don't understand," Zara said, her voice tinged with sadness. "We're not the same anymore. The Journalians have awakened something in us. Something more. As if to demonstrate, Zara raised her hand. The walls around them shimmered and changed, transforming the corridor into a vast starfield. Planets and galaxies spun around them in a dizzying display of power. "Holy shit," one of the soldiers muttered, voicing what they all felt. The display vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving them once again in the alien corridor. But the message was clear. These were not the same children who had been taken from Earth. Before Elena could formulate a response, a new presence made itself known. A Journalian, its form a swirling mass of light and energy, appeared among the children. "Greetings, humans," it communicated directly into their minds. "Your bravery is commendable, but your presence here is a violation. You must return to your world." General Laura Chen, who had insisted on joining the mission, stepped forward. "We're not leaving without our children," she declared, her military training evident in her stance and tone. The Journalian's form flickered, a gesture that might have been the alien equivalent of a sigh. "These young ones are under our protection. They are fulfilling a greater purpose, ensuring the survival and evolution of your species." "That's not your decision to make," Elena argued, her scientific curiosity warring with her moral outrage. "You can't just abduct an entire generation." As the confrontation escalated, something unexpected happened. The alien structure around them began to shift and change, responding to the heightened emotions of both the human team and the enhanced children. Walls melted away, revealing vast chambers filled with alien technology and thousands more children. Bridges of light formed and dissolved, connecting different areas of the massive space station. It was as if the entire structure was alive, a physical manifestation of the conflict unfolding within it. In the chaos, the human team found themselves separated. Elena and a small group ended up in what appeared to be a massive library, with streams of data and holographic displays filling the air around them. "My God," Dr. Gabriela Morales whispered, her physicist's mind racing to comprehend what she was seeing. This is incredible. The knowledge here, the technology, it's beyond anything we could have imagined." Meanwhile, General Chen and her soldiers found themselves in what seemed to be a training area. Children of various ages were practicing telekinesis, telepathy, and other psychic abilities that defied human understanding. "They're building an army," Chen realized with a mix of awe and horror. Back in the central chamber, Amit and the rest of the science team were face to face with a group of Journalians. The aliens' forms shimmered and changed as they communicated, sharing vast amounts of information in seconds. "You must understand," one of the Journalians projected, "we do not act out of malice. Your species stands at a crossroads. Without our intervention, you faced extinction. We offer your children the keys to the universe." Amit, his mind reeling from the psychic exchange, struggled to find words. "But at what cost?" he managed. "You've taken their choice, their families, their humanity." As the confrontations played out across the station, Zara and her group of enhanced children watched with growing concern. They could feel the pain and longing of the human adults, the love and desperation that had driven them across the stars. But they also understood the Journalians' purpose, the greater galactic context that humanity was only beginning to grasp. "We have to do something," Zara said to her companions. "This conflict, it could tear everything apart." The boy who had spoken earlier, Kai, nodded grimly. "But what can we do? We're caught between two worlds, Zora. We're not fully human anymore, but we're not Journalians either." Zara's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. "That's it, Kai. We're the bridge. We understand both sides. Maybe we can find a way to bring them together." As Zara and her friends began to formulate a plan, the station around them continued to shift and change, mirroring the turbulent emotions and clashing worldviews of its inhabitants. In the midst of this chaos, Elena found herself face to face with a holographic display of Earth, She watched in horror as simulations played out, showing the potential futures the Journalians had foreseen. Global wars, environmental collapse, a slow fade into cosmic insignificance. Is this truly what awaits us if we don't change? She whispered, her scientific mind warring with her heart. A soft voice answered from behind her. Not necessarily. But it is one possible future. Elena turned to find Zara standing there, her young face etched within wisdom far beyond her years. The Journalians showed us these visions, Zara continued, but they also showed us how to change them. We can help, Dr. Rossi. We want to help, but not by simply returning to the way things were. As Elena looked into Zora's eyes, she realized that the collision of worlds happening around them was more than just a physical confrontation. It was a collision of ideals, of possible futures, of what it truly meant to be human in a vast and ancient universe. The next few moments would determine not just the fate of the abducted children, but the very future of humanity itself. And as alarms blared and realities shifted, Elena steeled herself for the most important negotiation in human history. The Universal Library. The heart of the Journalian station pulsed with an energy that defied human understanding. Dr. Elena Rossi stood at its center, surrounded by a swirling vortex of light and information. Beside her, Zara's small hand was clasped in hers, a bridge between two worlds. This, Zara said, her voice filled with awe despite her familiarity with the place, is the Universal Library. Elena's scientific mind struggled to comprehend what she was seeing. Streams of data flowed around them like rivers of light. Holographic displays flickered in and out of existence, showing glimpses of distant worlds, long-lost civilizations, and possible futures. It's incredible, Elena breathed. The rest of the human team, along with a group of enhanced children and several Journalians, entered the vast chamber. General Chen's hand hovered near her weapon, her military instincts on high alert despite the awe-inspiring surroundings. What is this place? Amit asked, his eyes wide as he tried to take in the swirling data around them. One of the Journalians floated forward, its form coalescing into a more humanoid shape. This is the sum of all knowledge we have gathered across the eons. It communicated directly into their minds. The history of countless civilizations, the secrets of the universe itself. And you've been teaching this to our children? Dr. Gabriela Morales asked, her voice a mix of wonder and concern. Zara shook her head. Not everything, but enough to show us what's at stake. She turned to Elena. You've seen the simulations, Dr. Rossi. You know what could happen to Earth if humanity doesn't change its course. Elena nodded grimly, remembering the visions of war and environmental collapse she had witnessed earlier. But kidnapping children isn't the answer, she argued. You can't force evolution like this. Can't we? This came from Kai, the boy who had emerged as a leader among the enhanced children. He stepped forward, his young face set in determined lines. The Journalians have given us the tools to save our world, to take humanity to the stars. Why shouldn't we use them? General Chen's voice cut through the debate. Because it's not your choice to make, she said firmly. These children have families, lives. You stole them away in the night like thieves. The chamber around them seemed to react to the rising tensions. The swirling data streams pulsed faster, and the very air seemed to thicken with potential energy. Please, Zara said, her voice somehow carrying over the increasing chaos. Let us show you. Let us show you everything. Before anyone could object, Zara raised her hands. The Universal Library responded to her command, and suddenly the humans found their minds flooded with information. It was overwhelming, a torrent of knowledge and experience that threatened to sweep away their very sense of self. They saw the history of the universe unfold before them. From the first moments after the Big Bang to the far-flung future, they witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations across the galaxies. They experienced the Journalians' ancient past, their evolution from physical beings to creatures of pure energy and thought. And they saw Earth. They saw its past, its present, and its myriad possible futures. They saw a world ravaged by climate change and war, a humanity that destroyed itself in its infancy, but they also saw incredible potential, a united Earth reaching for the stars, unlocking the secrets of the universe, joining a galactic community of incredible diversity and wonder. As suddenly as it began, the vision ended. The humans stumbled, their minds reeling from the experience. Alina found herself on her knees, tears streaming down her face. "Now do you understand?" Zara asked softly. "This is what we've been learning, what we've been preparing for." Elena looked up at the young girl, seeing her in a new light. "But the cost," she managed to say. "Your childhoods, your families." Kai stepped forward, his expression solemn. "We know it's been hard for them," he said. "For you. But we gained so much. We can help shape the future of our entire species." The journalian who had spoken earlier moved to the center of the group. "We do not take such actions lightly," it communicated. "But we have seen countless civilizations destroy themselves on the cusp of greatness. We could not stand by and watch it happen again." General Chen, her military composure shaken by what she had experienced, found her voice. "So what now?" she demanded. "Do we just accept this? Let you keep our children?" A moment of heavy silence fell over the chamber. Then, surprisingly, it was Amit who spoke up. "Maybe," he said slowly, "we're thinking about this the wrong way." All eyes turned to him as he continued. "We came here to save the children, to bring them home. But home isn't just a place, is it? It's where we grow, where we learn, where we become who we're meant to be." He gestured around at the Universal Library. "This knowledge, these abilities our children have gained, they're incredible gifts. Gifts that could save our world, propel humanity forward in ways we can barely imagine." Elena nodded, beginning to see where Amit was going. But she added, "Gifts are meant to be shared, to be brought home." Zara's eyes lit up with sudden understanding. "You mean?" "A compromise," Elena said, looking from the children to the journalians to her fellow humans. "We bring the children back to Earth, all of them. But we also bring this knowledge, this potential. We let them teach us, guide us." The chamber hummed with energy as everyone considered this proposal. The journalians conferred among themselves in a rapid exchange of thought and light. Finally, the lead journalian spoke. "Such a thing has never been done," it said. "To introduce so much advanced knowledge to a civilization at your stage of development. The risks are significant." "So are the risks of doing nothing," Gabriella pointed out. "You've shown us that yourselves." Zara stepped into the center of the group, her young face alight with purpose. "We can do it," she said firmly. "We've learned so much here, but Earth is still our home. We can be the bridge between worlds, helping humanity take its next steps into the galaxy." Kai nodded, standing beside her. "It won't be easy," he admitted. "There will be fear, resistance, but we've been trained for this. We can help our people understand, adapt, grow." The journalians' forms shimmered as they communicated rapidly among themselves. Finally, the lead journalian turned back to the group. "Very well," it projected. "We will allow the children to return to Earth, with conditions. They must be free to share their knowledge, to guide your species as they see fit. And we will be watching. If humanity chooses to reject this gift, to continue down a path of self-destruction, we won't," Elena said firmly. "I've seen what we can become. We won't squander this chance." As the details of the agreement were worked out, Elena found herself standing with Zora at the edge of the Universal Library. They watched as the swirling data streams seemed to coalesce, forming a glowing portal. "Are you ready?" Elena asked softly. Zara took a deep breath, her eyes reflecting the light of countless stars. "I think so," she said. "It's going to be strange, going back. We're not the same children who left." Elena squeezed her hand. "No, you're not," she agreed. "But that's okay. Earth isn't the same either. We'll grow together." As the enhanced children said their goodbyes to the Journalians and the human team made final preparations, Alina felt a profound sense of both ending and beginning. They had come seeking a rescue, a return to the way things were. Instead, they were heading home with the keys to humanity's future. The portal hummed with energy, a gateway between worlds. As they stepped through, Alina knew that the real work was just beginning. But for the first time since the children vanished, she felt a surge of true hope. Humanity's children were coming home, bringing with them the wisdom of the stars and the promise of a future brighter than they had ever dared to imagine. As Earth appeared before them, a blue jewel hanging in the vastness of space, Alina smiled. The Universal Library had given them knowledge beyond measure. Now it was up to humanity to write the next chapter of their cosmic story. The future, with all its challenges and wonders, was waiting.